Good day. Hype is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you have to generate enthusiasm, but if you generate too much enthusiasm, that can cause problems too. Bioshock was a game that had a tremendous amount of hype in the early 2000s, and it rose to popularity. But even at the time, people were saying that it was overhyped, and it wasn't as good as the advertising would lead you to believe. Well, today, we're going to take a deep dive into Bioshock and see if it's really that good, or really that bad.
Bioshock was developed and published by 2K and released to the gaming public in 2007. A remastered version would be developed by Blind Squirrel Games and published by 2K for every major console and the PC. Today, we're going to specifically be looking at the remastered PC release. In 2007, I had no idea this game even existed, as I did not follow gaming news in those days. It wouldn't be until a year later when I asked a random dude at the local GameStop for a recommendation that I learned of its existence. I bought the 360 version and I played it long into the night on my 20-inch RCA tube TV. My feelings on it were decidedly mixed. Like with other games from that era, I quite ironically thought that it was too modern and that it was stealing the thunder from what I considered better and more classic games. Games that at that time would have only been 2 or 3 years old. I got into some heated discussions about the game, saying it wasn't really that good, and in the intervening time, I kind of had that opinion, until I asked myself one question: was the game really bad? I got the remaster and promptly did the same thing I did back in 2008. I played it to the exclusion of all other games. I was shocked by just how much of the game that I remembered after all these bloody years. It turned out that the game was really good after all. And now I am well and truly a Bioshock fan. In spite of that, I know why I felt like it was too modern, and I know why people, myself included, found it so easy to hate on. But if you divorce the game from the hype machine and System Shock 1 and 2 and judge it by what it does and by its own merits, you will find that Bioshock is a hell of a game. So what the hell is the game even about? Bioshock is a first-person shooter with immersive sim elements. The game takes place in the year 1960, and you play as the mostly silent protagonist named Jack. His plane goes down in the middle of the Atlantic. He seeks shelter in a lighthouse only to be transported to the underwater city named Rapture. Something is rotten in the city of Rapture. Many of its inhabitants have degenerated into insane psychopaths called Splicers. Would you kindly be a bad enough dude to fight the Splicers and save Rapture? Despite me thinking it was modern in 2008, this game is classic in every respect. You have non-regenerative health, and in places, health packs are very scarce, and you do not regenerate even a tiny bit of health. There are health stations, but they cost in-game money to use. This is offset by what are called Vita Chambers. When you die, you come back to life with absolutely no penalty, only a short distance from where you died. This makes the attrition method of gameplay really viable. But is it really so bad? Is it really that different from just quick saving and loading? For me today, I think it was a great idea, as it keeps the player in the game and keeps the player from wanting to quit due to frustration. You can carry all your weapons on your person at any one time, and you have a lot of them. Not only that, but the game features alternate ammo types, and the game encourages you to use different weapons and ammo on the different enemies. You start with the Webley pistol, and it will serve you well for many enemy encounters. You then got the Thompson submachine gun. It is 13 pounds of awesome and is great on hordes of little guys. The grenade launcher is great on bosses. The chemical sprayer is a cool concept, but I never found myself using it all that much. Then you got the crossbow, and it's another weapon that will be seldom used, and I only ever deployed it when I was low on ammo in my other guns. Finally, you got your boomstick, the 12-gauge pump gun. It's good for taking down literally everything. Little bastards giving you trouble? 12-gauge to the face. Bosses giving you a hard time? Give them a face full of flaming buckshot. It is by far the best weapon in the game, except no substitutes. There are weapon upgrades to be found throughout the game, and you better upgrade that shotgun fast, because a fully upgraded shotgun is the true Hand of Talos. The rest of the guns are alright, but an upgraded shotty with plenty of ammo is literally the difference between life and death. So all those weapons are superb, but you gotta have ammo for them, and it can be hard to come by. So it's a good thing you got your trusty wrench. Unless you are facing bosses or hard to kill enemies, the wrench is pretty much all you need to take down the basic bastards. It does good damage, and eventually you will get an upgrade that stun locks and freezes enemies with the wrench, thus making it entirely OP. Plasmids and gene tonics are this game's magic and character upgrade system. The lore for this is pretty dark. Some sailors in Rapture found a sea slug with some miraculous properties. Some mad science later, and this slug was used to create Adam, essentially undifferentiated stem cells that somehow lets you shoot bees and lightning out of your hands. And somehow be better at hacking as well. This sea slug would be implanted into female children, later to be called little sisters. They would dispense Adam for a price and also harvest it from corpses. The inhabitants of Rapture could use this Adam to spend at vending machines to get superpowers. But Adam is horribly addictive, and if you don't keep taking it, you go nuts. Hence all the insane gene splicers. What powers your lightning and bee shooting abilities is appropriately enough called Eve, and you find Eve hypos scattered around a level, and like with health, you can carry 9 of the bloody things. And damn, his wrist gonna hurt like a bastard tomorrow. The plasmids offer a lot of benefits. The first plasmid you get is lightning, and it's broken as all hell. This plasmid allows you to use the 1-2 punch. You shock the shit out of a splicer, and then bash him or her on the head with the wrench. And that will pretty much take care of the vast majority of the enemies in this game. The rest of the plasmids are alright, but in practice are kind of worthless, and you will forget you even have the bloody things. The gene tonics are far more useful, as they will give you a stat bonus and will increase your survivability. Getting more Adam to buy more upgrades features a moral choice, and if the plasmids mattered more, then the moral choice would matter, well, more. Sadly, since you don't really need plasmids to survive, there is literally no reason to take the evil option. Well, unless you come from Portland, I guess. In the game, you get Adam from little sisters. You can choose to save them or harvest them. If you save the little sister, you get a little less, and if you murder an innocent brainwashed child, you get a little more. Now, if you really needed that Adam, and if the game was appreciably harder with less Adam, and if you only got a tiny drop if you save them, this might be a legitimately hard choice. As it is, there's only a tiny few plasmids worth it, and most are, funny enough, found for free in the game world, and by the end of the game, you will probably have a surplus of Adam. And finally, you got guns, and they are pretty bloody powerful, so you don't really need to make a choice between being a child murderer or just shooting somebody in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. And sadly, plasmids are kind of superfluous with how good that bloody shotgun is, and there is literally no need to ever harvest a little sister, thus making this neat concept really lack narrative weight. Bioshock also introduces an interesting mechanic where you use a camera to take pictures of enemies so that you can do more damage to them. I'm not sure that's entirely logical, but it's a cool concept. However, like with many of the more advanced aspects of this game, you won't be using that camera for very long, and after you take 2 or 3 pictures, you kind of forget you even have the bloody thing. With this in mind though, the devs really tried to make a complex system, and the complex system works. But sadly, a few powers and a few weapons are broken, and thus the gameplay, despite its complexity, is still pretty straightforward. And I think it's likely due to the broken weapons and powers that people called this simplified console crap, even though it really isn't. Another element that isn't simplified console crap is the hacking and the crafting. You have a little hacking minigame you gotta do here and there. You can hack robots to fight for you, and you can hack vending machines to get health and ammo. Yeah, there is an economy of sorts in the game. You can collect Rapture bucks to buy weapons and ammo, and you hack the vending machines to get better prices and items. Hacking can be difficult and extremely cheap at times, but you can craft auto hackers, and they're easy to create too, thus reducing that bit of annoyance. Even though it sounds like this game's going to be really easy because of the broken powers and the ability to craft auto hackers, believe me, you're going to need every advantage you can get because this game is really bloody difficult. The enemies are smart and can do a crap ton of damage to you. The little sisters are guarded by the famous Big Daddy, and Big Daddy here can take a shit ton of damage before dying. He moves fast and carries really powerful weapons. 12 gauge works, but just barely. The game does feature boss fights, and they can be pretty tough, if you don't have enough health and ammo, that is. The story for the game is one of the best. You are thrown in media res, and you have to figure out just what the hell happened to Rapture. You do this by picking up audio logs, and this was another element that I thought was too modern, but I can see why they used it. You don't have to stop playing to get the story, and these logs are well acted and will fill you in on all the seedy details. Story is also told in level design and set dressing, and it paints a very bleak picture. The story would go on to become one of the top gaming stories of all time, and despite the complaints that you will find here and there, the gameplay, despite being straightforward, also stood the test of time as well. If you were 5 years old in 2007, get this on your console of choice and enter the world of Rapture. In terms of graphics, back in 2008 on my 20-inch tube TV, the game looked absolutely awe-inspirational. I was especially impressed by the water graphics. As for the people, well, they could have been better, but the environments, the guns, and all the textures transported me to a city beneath the sea. In 2024, with the remaster on a 2K monitor, the game delivers the same experience. Although, like in 2008, the people still look pretty crappy for some reason. The remaster itself is pretty bloody good. I was able to run it at 60 FPS, and it didn't dip once. The PC port has controller support that is, unfortunately, not very good. You cannot switch between keyboard and mouse and controller on the fly, and if your battery dies, you gotta exit the game and restart before it will read your controller again. I did have one or two crashes to desktop, but all told, it's a fairly well optimized PC port. Sound for the game is pretty great. Sound really helps generate the creepy atmosphere, and all the voice acting is top tier. But, and this is a big hairy cellulite bum, there's a lot of reused sound clips. The enemies won't shut the hell up, and as you progress through the game, you will slowly go as mad as them because they all have the same canned voice lines. What would have been creepy early in the game just gets bloody annoying later on. You got some that are just randomly screaming, and others that will sing the same goddamn song over and over again. It's enough to make me want to hunt them down just to put them out of my misery. Music for the game is excellent. It mixes some licensed tracks with a really good atmospheric score. The narrative is where Bioshock really shines, and the narrative can be divided into 3 parts. The first third of the game is just you figuring out what the hell is going on. The second third is you gearing up for what you think is the final conflict. And the last third is the aftermath. The game starts up with the player character flying on a plane over the North Atlantic in the swinging days of 1960. Jack talks about how he is special and how he is destined for great things. This is the only time that Jack will speak for the entire game. 2 seconds later, his plane crashes in front of a lighthouse. He goes inside in search of aid, only to find a submersible. You hop in, and your excellent adventure begins. In this part of the game, you get introduced to a guy named Andrew Ryan. He created Rapture so that people who wanted to make money could get away from controlling governments. Andrew Ryan and Rapture is supposed to be a critique of the writer Ayn Rand and capitalism. Well, the game does none of that. Andrew Ryan has no ties to Ayn Rand, and Rapture is not a capitalist dystopia. Instead, it's just a monarchy, with King Ryan I as the sovereign. No, really, just stick with me for a minute. Think about this. Andrew Ryan owns Rapture, and all the people that live there pay taxes to him and lease their facilities from him. Kings of old owned all the land, and the noblemen had to lease the land from the king. And that's exactly what King Ryan I does. After the kick-ass intro to the city, you alight in Rapture proper and get contacted by the voice with the radio signal, Atlas. For the first bit of the game, he will help you navigate Rapture and figure out what is going on. In short, the people of Rapture had a little civil war, and now society has broken down. Atlas wants you to save his family, and you kindly start helping him out. All the while, you'll be learning about just what kind of sovereign King Ryan I was. And wouldn't you know it, he was a paranoid and hypocritical bastard. His noblemen are no better. King Ryan I surrounded himself with some of the worst. Psychopathic artists, scientists that would have had the likes of Mingala go green at the gills. Rapture, like many absolute monarchies, was a den of vipers, a wretched hive of scum and villainy. And you gotta fight through all of them to kindly save Atlas's family. As you fight the psychos, Ryan gets pissed. As a mad king, he seems to think that everything is proceeding just as planned. And he, along with his nobles and psychos, will try to stop you from completing your objectives. You do have an ally, though. As you save the Little Sisters, the degenerate creator of the Little Sisters, Dr. Tenenbaum, will contact you and start helping you out. She feels bad about committing crimes against humanity and wants to atone. Eventually, you make it to where Atlas's family is hiding, and at the last minute, just before they escape, King Ryan I kills them. Now it's time to play a little game of Regicide. The game will have different moments where something will be revealed or the player gets a gut punch, and Atlas's family buying it in front of you is just the first. And this marks the end of the first third of the game and firmly sets up Ryan as the game's primary antagonist. King Ryan decides that if he can't have the kingdom, no one will! And you gotta complete a mission where you turn the oxygen plant back on. As you collect more audio logs, you find out that the Civil War started due to Ryan getting more and more authoritarian, and there was a conflict between him and a nobleman named Fontaine. He had a company called Fontaine Futuristics, and he sold Adam and the plasmids. Like any king, Ryan wanted that under his control, so he took control of that business for the good of the realm. You eventually start closing in on Ryan's office, and you find people have had their bodies placed upon pikes as a warning to the other peasants that the king's word is law. You blast your way in and meet gaming history. Before you reach Ryan, you find a wall that has the words, "Would you kindly," emblazoned upon it, and an audio log where you hear the evil Dr. Shuchong force a brainwashed child to kill a puppy. Now what could all this mean? You finally make it to Ryan, and he makes the stunning revelation that you do not exist, and that instead you were created in a lab, and that a man chooses and a slave obeys. Yep. The whole time you have been under someone else's control, and that "would you kindly," a phrase used quite often by Atlas, has been used to control you. Then Jack uses a 9-iron to get a hole-in-one in Ryan's head. And then we learn that Atlas was a bad guy all along. Oh my god, I was wrong. Atlas was Fontaine all along. You finally made a clone out of... Anyway, moving on. And that the player had unwittingly been doing his bidding all along. To quote Robot Chicken, "What a twist!" This is one of the biggest video game twists of all time. It comes out of nowhere because as a gamer, you are conditioned to follow that voice with an internet connection. If you're a Halo fan, you are even more conditioned than usual. At this point, the game blew my mind. And I hated it, because I felt like it was taking away from the even better twist in KOTOR 1. I was like, yeah, it's good, but KOTOR is better, and people don't talk about that anymore. In reality, both twists are kick-ass, and Bioshock can have this twist without reducing KOTOR's. In any event, this twist could have been done a little better. See, it works, but it doesn't change that much, nor does it have as much emotional weight as it could have. Both Fontaine and Ryan are right bastards, so taking both out is no bad thing. Now, imagine if Andrew Ryan had been a little less of a bastard and yet still took a 9-iron to his head. Now that would have been even more memorable and tragic. So now Fontaine is the villain, and you gotta shove a 9-iron up. Anyway, For the last bit of the game, Fontaine will be trash-talking you all the time. Sadly, Jack can't trash-talk him back. Tenenbaum undoes a lot of your conditioning, but Fontaine will use some trigger words to screw with Jack. He lowers your max health, screws with your plasmids, and a chunk of the last third is unscrewing yourself and having a giant Twitter meltdown. Finally, we get to the part where I think this was a remnant of a previous game or something. In order to get to Fontaine, you have to, for some reason, turn yourself into a big daddy so that an already saved little sister will lead you through some doors, but they already led you through some doors before, so the whole big daddy sequence just feels tacked on and has some fridge horror. One part of the transformation has your voice box get mutilated. Did that get fixed after the game? We never get told that it does. And even weirder, once you get past the door as the Big Daddy and start riding an elevator to Fontaine, all the Big Daddy stuff just disappears. Anyway, the final battle with Fontaine is alright. It's not really a challenging boss fight by any means, well, on normal at least. By that point, you will basically be Death Incarnate, and a few grenades to the face finally takes care of him. At the end, all the little sisters attack him, and they take him down once and for all. And that's a very cathartic ending too, because when you consider all the horrible stuff done to those poor kids, it's good that they got the kill. Now, in addition to this, we get an extremely heartwarming epilogue, provided you didn't play the game like a Portlandian. Jack and the little sisters return to the mainland, and they all live happily ever after. Mostly. Jack has quick aging, just like the clone troopers from Star Wars, and dies young. But still, it was a great ending for a great game, and in many respects, it deserved all the hype that it got. It's not necessarily the best game of the year all years, but it's still a high-quality experience nonetheless. Upon its release, it would gain a massive amount of popularity, and due to this, we would get a knee-jerk sequel called Bioshock 2, where you played as a Big Daddy in Rapture 10 years after the first game. It also had multiplayer? Yeah, it did not get that much of a positive reception, although it does have its fans. I personally never bothered with it due to the ending of the first game. We would get a real sequel in 2013 with the release of Bioshock Infinite. This took the formula from the first game, improved it a bit, and gave us a new setting and characters. Instead of under the sea, the game is set in a shining city in the sky. The gameplay was tweaked to be smoother and more responsive, and really, this game truly earned the name Bioshock.
If you were turned off by the endless praise back in the early 2000s, I say get this game and judge it on its own merits and see that Bioshock has a lot to offer. And so, I am General Lotz, wishing you good Prey 2017 and good System Shock Remake, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.